It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
All right, this next question is from Alana.
Like Atlanta with or the city Atlanta.
I think there's no T. It's A-L-A. Maybe it's Alana. A-L-A-N-N-A.
I think we do everything in our power, and we're just going to blame it on our southern accents or southernness that we slaughter names. But keep going.
This is Al-Anna. You
are trying to upset our listeners. Don't do that. Keep going.
Does it make more sense to keep bonds in my Roth 401k, Roth IRA, or regular brokerage account? I only have bonds in my Roth IRA as part of the target date account. 401k is an index mix. Brokerage is S&P 500. So this is what it sounds like Alana is asking. I've heard you guys talk about like...
All I hear is the city name. Keep going. Keep going.
Man, you made me lose my train of thought. Here's what I think she's asking. What types of accounts do I hold different types of investments in? Like if I want to hold bonds, where's the best place to hold bonds? Now, unfortunately, she only gave us 3 options. I don't love any of those options. Yeah. Roth 401k, Roth IRA, or regular. How do you approach that decision-making process?
Since I'm sure we're destroying her name, which always upsets me because I want to get everybody's name as accurate as possible. I held off from going, every time you named off, because I think you said Roth.
She's here. She just said. She said it's Alana.
Okay, Alana. See, you were saying it wrong.
Thank you. And by the way, this is why having the chat feature is so helpful. I can see it right here in front of me. This is Alana.
So Alana has, and I want to make sure I get this right. You had Roth IRA, Roth 401k,
brokerage
and then
account.
Taxable brokerage account.
Exactly
Those were the 3 pots. The one that would be the winner chicken dinner is the normal traditional tax deferred account. Is where I really love for bonds to be, because what's the problem with bonds, or what's the characteristic of bonds, is that they pay ordinary income, meaning that if whatever their yield is, that's going to be paid as interest. It's going to be ordinary income. So that goes into play. I don't love it in any type of Roth accounts usually, because that's where you want your tax, your growth assets. You want to stick it to our favorite taxing uncle as much as possible. So we put our growth assets into those Roth accounts to take advantage of that. Now Alana said something very important there, though, that you read out. You said it was part of her bond exposure was part of target retirement funds or index target retirement funds.
That is her
so
bond exposure. So
I'm going to tell Alana to not look, if you're on your path to building $500,000 of assets, that base level of wealth building, let the index target retirement funds do what they're going to do. Because I want you buying the index target retirement fund in your Roth, your brokerage, and look, it does get in. This is the point, and we got show content coming out on this, is that I love index target retirement funds, but even they distribute income out. So anytime you get into that taxable brokerage account, that comes into play. But for bonds specifically, because that's what Alana was asking about, we don't love them in the Roth accounts. So that leads me to, maybe it could be okay in the brokerage out of those 3. If you're giving me a bunch of ugly things to kind of sort through, I'm going to probably use the taxable brokerage account, because look, there are 2 components, not only the interest of the bond, but there's also the principal of the bond. So if it went up in value, meaning you were able to sell it at a premium later, you buy a bond fund or you buy a bond specifically, in addition to the interest being paid out to you, there's going to be a principal value that could potentially be capital gains or a loss with what's going on with interest rates right now. So out of those 3 ugly ducklings, my final answer is going to be brokerage accounts. I'd love to know what your thoughts are.
I agree with everything that you said, but there's 2 little.
I heard a but.
But there's 2 little nerdy.
There's a but in there.
There's some nerdy things I'm going to throw in here. First of all, Alana, if you're buying target retirement index funds, that's awesome, and we love that. I'm going to assume that means your portfolio has not reached like what we would call critical mass for advanced strategies. But if you are saving, which it sounds like you are, you're going to get to that point where you have some critical mass, right? Where you can do some exciting things. There's 2 things I would remind you to think of. Inside of your Roth 401k, if your employer offers a match, right? So if you're taking advantage of employer money,
Oh, great point.
part of your 401k is going to be pre-tax because your employer can't put money into the Roth bucket. So your Roth 401k is a great place because some portion of your 401k is actually pre-tax. You didn't list it explicitly, but if there's a match in there, that's going on. So that would probably be the one that gets me.
Look at you
because of
finding a
that,
workaround.
right?
Okay, that's dynamite.
All
Let's
right.
see where you go
There's
next.
numero dos. One of the things we have to do is a lot of times we have clients who they sell a business or they've just been great savers and the majority of their assets are in after-tax accounts. And, we don't want to trigger a ton of taxation inside of those accounts by buying bonds or we want to minimize that to whatever extent we can. Not all bonds are treated the same. There actually are a certain type of bonds that you can buy that are tax-free if you hold them inside of a taxable brokerage account. They're called municipal bonds. So one of the things, again, when your financial circumstance warrants, you may want to think about looking at municipal bond holdings if you're forced to hold them inside of an after-tax brokerage account. Now, that's not to replace all of your bond exposure. That's just an idea of a type of bond you can insert to satisfy that risk-off portion of your portfolio.
The only thing I would add to this is because when you get to that critical mass that you had already mentioned, this is one of the key things I love about being a financial advisor.
Exactly right. Yep.
Is because these are advanced planning strategies where we not only talk about the bucket strategy of how much money is after tax, how much is tax free, and how much is tax deferred, but there will come a point once you get over $500,000, so as you get closer to $1 million, you want to start paying attention to what you're putting where to minimize the impact of taxes as much as possible. That will come into play, and that's when, ding, 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 the abundance cycle completes the process where you graduate. Remember, the whole purpose here is we want you. We know this is years in the making. You're going to come here. You're going to take all the free information we're sharing. You're going to hopefully compare that to what you're doing in your financial life and saying, hey, is there something I could have learned from the Money Guy Show and apply in my life to accelerate? So learn, apply, grow, and reach a level of success that when you do reach that 7-figure mark where you're like, man, this thing, I am now the CEO of a pretty big operation. I don't know what I don't know. I have blind spots. There's areas of expertise that I would love to fine tune and make sure I'm optimizing. That's when the abundance cycle comes in. And that's why I love the win-win thing where you can come and take all this information, but there's still, you know what, we're laying our cards on the table. The why is I want to be an educator to you, but also this has turned out to be the greatest, business idea ever is for me to love and educate on you and then to turn you guys into clients down the road. I would just ask you to come join me on this journey. Come get all the free advice, but then go take advantage of our resources. Go to moneyguy.com/resources, tons of free giveaways there.